What if I told you that the secret to your biggest breakthroughs isn't more effort, but less? What if everything you've been taught about success, about growth, about changing your life was backwards? Imagine if one small, almost invisible change could unlock a cascade of limitless personal and professional growth. Not someday, not eventually, but starting right now. I'm the Cosmic Sage, and today I'm going to tell you about a man who worked harder than anyone in his town, gave everything he had, pushed until he broke and still failed, until one conversation with a stranger taught him the hidden leverage point, a single habit so deceptively simple. He'd been walking past it every single day of his life. This story will change how you see effort, how you see progress, how you see yourself. Stay with me. But first, if you're new to these tales, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, I bring you stories from the Old West that'll flip your understanding of success upside down. And if you've been riding with me, show some love with that like button. More people need to hear this. Now let's ride. The year was 1887, and the town of Red Rock Valley was built on one thing: cattle. Ranches stretched for miles. Cowboys drove herds to market. The stockyards were the heartbeat of the whole territory. And working at those stockyards was a 31-year-old man named Samuel Garrett. Samuel was what they called a livestock broker. He connected ranchers with buyers, negotiated deals, arranged transportation. When a deal went through, he got a small commission. It was honest work, hard work. But Samuel was barely surviving. Every month, he'd make just enough to pay rent on his tiny room above the feed store and eat one meal a day, while other brokers in town, men like Charles Whitmore and Robert Hayes, they were thriving, building houses, buying land, living comfortable lives. Samuel couldn't figure it out. He worked harder than anyone. He was at the stockyards before dawn and stayed until after sunset. He talked to every rancher who came through. He studied cattle prices obsessively. He knew more about livestock than men who'd been in the business twice as long. But month after month, year after year, he struggled. His boots had holes. His coat was threadbare. He skipped meals to save money. And the worst part? He could see other brokers, men who seemed to work half as hard, closing deal after deal while Samuel scrambled for scraps. One night, exhausted and defeated, Samuel sat in his room with his ledger open. He'd made $43 that month. After rent and food, he had $2 left. He put his head in his hands and whispered, "What am I doing wrong? I'm giving everything I have. Why isn't enough?" What would you do, friends, when you're working as hard as you possibly can and still failing? When effort isn't translating to results? When you're doing everything right, but getting everything wrong? The next morning, Samuel dragged himself to the stockyards like he did every day. But this morning was different. There was a stranger in town, an older man, maybe 60, with a weathered face and sharp eyes. He stood by the cattle pens, watching the morning activity with the kind of attention most people don't have. Samuel noticed him because the man wasn't looking at the cattle. He was looking at the brokers, watching how they moved, how they talked, how they worked. After an hour, the stranger walked over to Samuel. "You're Samuel Garrett, aren't you?" Samuel nodded, surprised. "Yes, sir." "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. I've been watching you for the past hour. My name is Augustus Finch. I used to broker livestock contracts for the Union Pacific Railroad. Retired now, just passing through." He looked Samuel up and down, saw the worn boots, the tired eyes, the desperation barely hidden. "Can I ask you something, son?" "Sure. Why are you failing?" The bluntness hit Samuel like a punch. I don't know, sir. I work harder than anyone here. I know the business. I know cattle. I just can't seem to close enough deals. Augustus smiled, but it wasn't mean. It was knowing. Walk with me. They walked to the edge of the stockyard where they could see everything. The cattle, the ranchers, the buyers, the other brokers moving through the chaos. Augustus pointed at Charles Whitmore, the most successful broker in Red Rock Valley. You see Charles over there? Yes, sir. How hard is he working right now? Samuel watched. Charles was leaning against a fence post, casually talking to a rancher, laughing, relaxed, not rushing anywhere. He doesn't look like he's working hard at all, Samuel admitted. Exactly. Now look at you this morning. I watched you talk to 14 different ranchers in 1 hour. You were sweating, moving fast, pushing hard. You talked more, moved more, worked more than anyone else here. Augustus turned to face Samuel. And yet Charles will close 3 deals today while you close none. Why do you think that is? Samuel's frustration boiled over. Because life isn't fair? Because he's got connections I don't have? Because he got lucky? No, Augustus said quietly. Because you're trying to move a boulder with your bare hands while Charles is using a lever. Augustus sat down on a bench and motioned for Samuel to join him. Let me tell you something about leverage. Son, most people think success comes from effort. More work equals more results. So they push harder, work longer, give more, and then they wonder why they're exhausted and broke, while other people seem to succeed effortlessly. He pulled out a small notebook from his coat. But here's what they don't understand. Effort without leverage is just exhaustion. You're working hard, but you're working wrong. Samuel felt defensive. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I talk to ranchers. I know the prices. I show up every day. I know you do, and that's the problem. Augustus opened his notebook and drew a simple diagram. A large rock, one man pushing against it directly, another man with a long lever and a fulcrum point. See this? 2 men, same rock. One is pushing with all his might, and the rock doesn't move. The other uses a lever and moves it easily. Same goal, different approach. The difference is leverage. He looked at Samuel. You're the man pushing. Charles is the man with the lever. And do you know what his lever is? What? One tiny habit. So small you've been walking past it every single day without noticing. Samuel leaned forward. What habit? Augustus smiled. I'll show you. But first, I need you to understand something. The reason you're failing isn't because you're not working hard enough. It's because you're chasing the wrong thing. What do you mean? You're chasing deals. Charles is building relationships. You see the difference? Samuel shook his head. But I talk to ranchers. I build relationships. No, you don't. You talk at ranchers. You pitch them. You try to convince them. I watched you this morning. Every conversation you had was you trying to close a deal right then and there. 14 conversations, 14 rejections. You're exhausting yourself and annoying them. Augustus tapped his notebook. Charles does something different. Something so simple you'd laugh if I told you. But that one tiny thing creates leverage that compounds over time. And now, years later, ranchers come to him. He doesn't have to chase. The deals come to him. What does he do? Every single morning, before he does anything else, Charles spends 15 minutes writing notes, personal notes, to ranchers he's worked with, to ranchers he's met, to ranchers he wants to work with. Just a few lines. Hope your family is well. Heard your herd came through the winter strong. Let me know if you need anything. Samuel blinked. That's it? That's the secret. That's a leverage point, Augustus said. It sounds too simple to matter, doesn't it? 15 minutes of writing notes. But here's what happens. Those ranchers remember him. When they're ready to sell, who do they think of? The desperate broker who tried to pressure them into a deal, or the man who took time to remember them, to care about them as people, not just as commissions? He closed his notebook. Charles builds trust 15 minutes at a time. You're trying to build deals one desperate pitch at a time. He's planting seeds every day that will grow into deals months from now. You're trying to harvest a field you never planted. Samuel felt something shift in his chest, a crack in his understanding. So I'm working harder, but getting nowhere because I'm focused on the wrong thing? Exactly. You're trying to push the boulder. Charles found the leverage point. And the crazy thing? The leverage point is always something small. Something you can do consistently. Something that compounds over time. Augustus stood up. Here's your choice, Samuel. You can keep doing what you're doing, working yourself to death, chasing deals, getting nowhere. Or you can find your leverage point. That one tiny habit that, done consistently, will change everything. Will writing notes work for me? Maybe, maybe not. Everyone's leverage point is different, but the principle is the same. Stop chasing big breakthroughs. Start building small habits that compound. He started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Samuel, the reason most people never find their leverage point is because it feels too small to matter. 15 minutes of notes? That won't change anything they think. But 15 minutes a day for a year? That's 90 hours of relationship building. That's leverage. And Augustus Finch walked out of Red Rock Valley, leaving Samuel sitting on that bench with his entire understanding of work shattered. That night, Samuel sat in his room, thinking. Everything he believed about success was based on effort. More hours, more pitches, more hustle. But Augustus was right. Samuel was exhausted and broke. Charles worked less and earned more. The difference wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't connections. It was leverage. Samuel pulled out a piece of paper and made a list of every rancher he'd ever met, 37 names. And then he started writing. Not pitches, not sales letters, just short, personal notes. Mr. Henderson, I remember you mentioned your son was learning to rope. Hope he's improving. Let me know if you need anything. Samuel Garrett. Mr. Williams, heard your calves came through strong this spring. That's good breeding. Reach out when you're ready to sell. Samuel. Simple, personal, no pressure. It took him 45 minutes to write 7 notes. It felt ridiculous, like he was wasting time. But he remembered Augustus's words. The leverage point feels too small to matter. That's how you know it's the right thing. So Samuel made a decision. Every morning, before he went to the stockyards, he would write notes. Just 15 minutes. No matter how pointless it felt. The first week, nothing changed. Samuel wrote notes every morning. 7 notes a day. 49 notes in a week. He went to the stockyards. He still struggled. He still barely closed any deals. His inner voice screamed at him. This isn't working. You're wasting time. Go back to hustling. But he remembered the boulder and the lever. The second week, nothing changed. The third week, nothing changed. Samuel started to doubt. Maybe Augustus was wrong. Maybe there was no shortcut. Maybe success really was just grinding harder. Then, 3 weeks in, something small happened. A rancher named Mr. Peterson walked up to Samuel at the stockyards. Garrett, I got your note. Appreciated you remembering my wife's been ill. She's doing better now. Thank you for asking. They talked, not about business, just life. At the end, Mr. Peterson said, I've got 40 head ready to sell next month. I'll come find you when I'm ready. Samuel's heart jumped. Thank you, sir. It wasn't a deal yet, but it was the first time a rancher had ever sought him out. The 4th week, 2 more ranchers mentioned his notes. The 5th week, he closed his first deal from a note he'd written. A small deal, but it came to him. He didn't have to chase it. By the end of the 2nd month, Samuel had written over 200 notes. And something strange started happening. Ranchers remembered him. When they came to town, they'd look for him specifically. Not because he was the loudest or the most aggressive, but because he'd taken time to see them as people. By the 3rd month, Samuel's income doubled. By the 6th month, it tripled. He wasn't working harder. He was working smarter. He'd found his leverage point. And that 15 minutes every morning, it changed everything. 1 year after meeting Augustus Finch, Samuel was one of the top brokers in Red Rock Valley. He'd moved out of his room above the feed store, rented a small house, had money saved for the first time in his life, and he still wrote notes every single morning. 15 minutes, no matter what. One day, he ran into Charles Whitmore at the stockyards. Charles smiled. "Samuel, I've been watching you. You've done well this year." "Thank you, Charles. Can I ask what changed?" Samuel thought about it, about Augustus, about the boulder and the lever, about the tiny habit that felt too small to matter, but changed everything. "I stopped trying to push boulders," Samuel said, "and I started using leverage." Charles nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "The notes." Samuel smiled. "The notes. Now, friends, listen to me carefully. We live in a world that worships monumental change. Grand gestures, big breakthroughs, massive effort. We think success looks like working 80 hours a week, like making 100 calls a day, like pushing until we break. But that's the lie. Real success, lasting success, comes from finding your leverage point. That one tiny habit, done consistently, that compounds over time until it creates results that look like magic to everyone else. Samuel spent years pushing boulders, exhausting himself, getting nowhere, and then he learned to use a lever. 15 minutes a day, writing notes. It felt too small to matter. But 15 minutes a day for a year became 90 hours of relationship building. And those 90 hours created more value than all the years of desperate hustling. Here's what you need to understand. You're probably pushing boulders right now, working hard, giving everything, and wondering why it's not enough. But effort without leverage is just exhaustion. You don't need to work more. You need to work smarter. You need to find your hidden leverage point. And here's the trick. It will feel too small to matter. That's how you know it's right. If it feels grand and impressive, it's probably not leverage. It's just more boulder pushing disguised as strategy. But if it feels almost ridiculous in its simplicity, if you think there's no way something this small could make a difference, that's your leverage point. For Samuel, it was 15 minutes of notes. For you, it might be something different. Maybe it's reading 10 pages every morning before you do anything else. Maybe it's making one genuine connection every day instead of 100 shallow ones. Maybe it's spending 5 minutes planning your day instead of reacting to chaos. Maybe it's saying no to one thing every week that doesn't serve your future. The leverage point is always small, always consistent, always compounding. And most people miss it because they're too busy pushing boulders. What would you do, friends? Would you keep pushing with all your might? Or would you step back, find a lever, and let physics do the work? This week, I want you to do something. 1, stop. Just for 1 hour, stop pushing. Stop hustling. Stop grinding. And ask yourself honestly, what am I doing that takes massive effort but produces minimal results? 2, identify your leverage point. What's one tiny habit, done consistently, that could compound over time? Not something impressive. Something almost embarrassingly simple. 3, commit to it for 30 days. no matter how pointless it feels. Because the leverage point always feels too small at first. That's the test. Samuel spent 3 weeks writing notes and seeing 0 results. Most people quit in week 2. Don't be most people. Before you go, I need something from you. If this story made you see effort differently, if it made you question whether you've been pushing boulders your whole life, share it with someone who's exhausted from working hard and getting nowhere. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's your leverage point? What's the one tiny habit you're going to commit to for the next 30 days? Let's build a community of people who work smarter, not just harder. People who understand that small, consistent actions beat grand gestures every single time. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Every week, the Cosmic Sage brings you stories that'll change how you see success, growth, and the path forward. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to stop pushing and start leveraging. This is the Cosmic Sage, reminding you that the secret to your biggest breakthroughs isn't more effort, it's better leverage. Find your tiny habit. Do it consistently. Let compound. And watch what happens when you stop pushing boulders and start moving mountains with 15 minutes a day. Until next time, friends, stop pushing. Start leveraging. The boulder doesn't care how hard you work, but the lever will change everything.